Good evening, Ghassan, or good morning where you're at. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. As much as well as one can be in these moments in life.
Absolutely. Ghassan, welcome to our series, What Have We Learned? As we shared, we ask you 5 questions. You have 5 minutes for each question to address those topics. You have selected a number of topics, starting with Israel. Number one, the West and Western values, all of these words in quotation marks, because this is a very broad category, but we are addressing it as it is being addressed in some parts of the West, as we, the West, we have Western values and so on. Number three is universities. Number four is coexistence. And number five is Germany, because you had some interesting experiences in Germany. Let me just start by asking you, Ghassan, what how do you see this current moment? Do you have any brief words for how you see this current moment we're in before we delve into the questions?
Well, yes, sure. I'm quite happy to share with you a general thing that I experience on a daily basis, really concerning living the current moment. I don't know about you, but I wake up every morning with a really bitter taste in my mouth, and I feel we are going through a massive historical moment where our very understanding of what a common humanity is disintegrating before our very eyes. And this disintegration is highly unpleasant, uh, especially that we as Arabs are being experiencing it as a redefining of humanity, with us being completely on its outside.
Absolutely, and I understand that you live in Australia, and maybe at the end, maybe you can share with us some parting words, or you can share any words right now, because this is the first time we're actually hosting someone on the series from Australia. Is there anything quick you want to share with us about being in Australia at a time like this?
Well, I mean, Australia is, despite the revolution in communication and travel and etc., still feels a very far away place from everything, and the distance weighs on you in all kind of ways, and sometimes it weighs in the sense of you move in environments where people really still have not captured the enormity of what is going on. But I think that's true also of the United States. uh, and yeah, but otherwise, I mean, Australia is Australia. The weather is very nice, and uh, it helps a little bit.
Absolutely. Speaking to you from the East Coast, that actually sounds good. طيب, let's delve into our topics. We'll start with the first topic, which is the topic of the day. What have we learned about Israel in the past year, in your view?
Well, I mean, as your questions invited me to think, what have I learned, what I haven't learned. I mean, it's part of me as an academic says it's too early to learn anything. It's more you learn by asking difficult questions that are not easy to reply to, and there's definitely some serious questions about Israel that have been coming to my mind. Um, Understanding the nature of the relation between Western colonialism and Israeli Israeli colonialism as an executor of a global Western colonial project. I've been asking myself a lot of questions about this relation between the West and Israel. And sometimes people try to say, well, the West is under the influence of the Zionist lobby, etc. So the power is in the Zionist lobby, which is making the decisions in the West, which then allows Israel to engage in what it is engaging. Sometimes you have to think to what extent Israel is simply someone that executes Western colonialism, because in the history of colonialism there is a big gap between the metropolis and the colonial executor. What I mean by this, you know, like the French in Paris decide what kind of colonial enterprise is happening, but there are also the foot soldiers of colonialism. And this relation has not been studied enough, because even though we can talk about French colonialism in Algeria, but the French in the metropolis looked down at the actual people who did the job of colonizing in Algeria. And you can say the same definitely in Australia, that we say the British colonized Australia, but the Brits in London and in the metropolis looked down at the actual people who were doing the job of colonizing. They consider them polluted by the violence that they have been engaging, and it allowed them to act as if they were cleaner and much more civilized, and it is the ones doing the colonizing that are being polluted by what they are doing. There are elements like this which make me think today about the relation between the West and Israel. To what extent Israel really is perpetrating this relation where it is doing the dirty work, if you like, of Western colonialism. And by the end of the day, it's going to finish, and you think, who is going to look like dirtied by this deed? Are the Western powers still going to manage to play the number of, oh, we are so civilized and nice, but it is the Israelis who did all this yucky killing, and it is not us? So there's this relation. I'm asking myself what it means for the future, post conflict. What kind of place will Israel have in the West? Will it be like the Pied Noir? Will there be a revival of anti-Semitism, actual anti-Semitism, as opposed to the pseudo-anti-Semitism that they're throwing at us at the moment? And so I'm asking these questions. The other line of questions that interest me is the big shift that happened in the way Israel has become the space where anti-cosmopolitan Jewish culture joins a worldwide anti-cosmopolitan movement represented by hardcore ethno-nationalism. This is a massive transformation, if you like, in the sense that in Jewish history, Jews were the avant-garde of cosmopolitan culture everywhere. We all sort of like learned our cosmopolitanism from many Jewish thinkers. So this kind of like transformation of what is the core of Jewish culture, as Israel is embodying, involves an interesting redesigning of extreme right culture. That is, the way a global extreme right culture is now articulated almost totally around Israeli colonialism, and taking it as one of its core representatives. And it is part of this that makes me think the way anti-Semitism, as it is used, sort of like the pseudo-anti-Semitism, has become one of the main instruments, not just to attack people who are against Israel, but simply any left-wing force in the world. Anti-Semitism has become, as it is used, has become one of the main technologies of trying to beat the left as a general movement.
Thanks, Ghassan. That was a lot to ponder. Interestingly, the next question or the next topic is very connected, and you already addressed some of it, and that is the West, and the West in quotation marks, or Western values also in quotation marks. What have we learned, as far as you would like to share with us, in the past year about the West or Western values and or?
Again, I see sort of like here, I want to stick to those sort of like Western values, as in democracy, freedom of speech, common humanity, those values which are the values of the Western Enlightenment, and that people still believe that Western nations are embodying these values, and the fact that the current situations obviously shows how selective this adherence to Western values as they are defined here has become. The biggest thing that I have been really reflecting on has to do with this question of the place of the Arab other, which I touched on earlier when you asked me how I was, because it's such an enormous thing. I have worked so much on racist othering, and how the different ways in which the West has othered people, and I stuck a bit too much between a duality between the other as an inferiorized other, and the other as an exploitable other. And so looking at Western colonialism as a history of inferiorizing and exploiting. One of the things that I haven't explored as much, and today I find myself increasingly in need of exploring, is the notion of the other as enemy, and the degree of enmity that is being projected towards the Arab other. I think this mode of othering the other as enemy is not completely different, but sort of like highlights certain aspects of the undermining of Western value, which we do not get when we concentrate on the history of racism as inferiorization and the history of racism as a history of exploitation. Take in the way the West creates enemies, and we are reaching out. I would say the degree to which genocide and the intensity of genocidal intent cannot be understood simply by inferiorization and exploitation, but precisely by trying to think, what does it mean to be an enemy other in such kind of like radical way?
This is a very, very big topic, and it's actually a bit muddled or confusing, because we put everything in the category of the West or Western values, where in reality it's the pretense that we are addressing. So I'm glad you You illuminated some of this. Let's move to the third topic, which is very important for all of us who teach at universities and who have been experiencing very different atmosphere at the university, which honestly has not started only on October 7th. There's been a long process of the neoliberalization of the university, the commodification of the university, and so on. But it has been intense the past year. What have we learned in the past year about universities or the university?
I can say also from personal experience that one of the things that I was most struck with is the fact that university administrations have surrendered the notion of academic authority and intellectual authority to politics and to something outside the academy. When let me take something as simple and as complex as a definition of anti-Semitism. When I go into a university which has adopted the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, my university, without consulting me being one of the most sort of like well-published scholars in the history of racism, anti-Semitism, etc. And I feel, wait a second, who did you actually consult? You are an intellectual academic institution. Who did you consult in order to come up with such and adopt such a definition of what anti-Semitism is? And they would say, well, we have sort of like, there was some politicians, there was some legal people, etc. And you think, okay, it's not just a matter of not consulting me in person. I feel what is going on is the surrender of the of complex things that it was up to academic authority to deal with, and surrendering often to even right-wing journalists who decide for us what is the meaning of anti-Semitism and not. And the university surrenders that and says, okay, we accept it. Sorry, we're not going to. So the ability to surrender academic authority by academic institutions comes on the back of a long history of creating a gap between academic administrators and academic researchers and teachers. And the fact that academic administrators have now a long history of treating academic researchers and academic teachers as something to be managed, as something, there is a degree of infantilism even in university cultures with a lack of trust. All of these have combined because I feel you can't get away. You can't get away. And so there is you can't get away. What I mean by this is a certain complicity in a mediocritization of knowledge and the world, because what is happening in Gaza, the academic and logical ways of arguing them and rationalizing them is so irrational and so beyond any logic that is coherent as we understand it in university. In order to get away with so much incoherence and so much irrationality and present this as the rationality of what is going on, to undermine people who point out the irrationality of it means that you become complicit in what is going on, what is happening. And I feel that basically that divide between the administrators and the researchers, etc., is part of what we are being subjected to today.
Do you feel that the university has become an extension of state power?
Oh, absolutely. I heard Nora Erkat the other day say something like this, which I totally agree with, which is that, for a long time, in the history of the university was a state apparatus that's main function is not to make state apparatuses feel comfortable. It is in a sense a degree of democratization in a country. To what extent the state is willing to finance a part of the state that gets stuck into it and does not allow it to be comfortable. And I think we have seen, because of the shrinking of the democratization, we have seen increasingly state apparatuses unwilling to let the university. I mean, in the US, it's different because you have many more, for instance, private universities. But in Australia, like in France, or in fact, most of the universities are public universities funded by the state. And so it is perceived as it is up to the state to protect this body that is getting stuck into it, and it's a measure of its democracy. But now the state wants the universities to be yet another obedient arm of the state that is perpetuating exactly what it wants it to perpetuate. Yeah.
No, I appreciate you mentioning that the university has actually essentially abrogated its obligation of making states potentially feel uncomfortable or checking state power. And it seems that it's not just the university, and I'm not going to say more than this because I'm not supposed to be talking, but it also seemed that both the university and journalism slash mainstream media have both abrogated their responsibility. So we are seeing a slide away from democracy in supposed democratic countries, or the supposed democratic countries. And I know we're going to talk about Germany next or after next. Okay, thanks, Ghassan. Let's move to a messy topic, which is the topic of coexistence, which is the fourth topic. What, in your view, have we learned about coexistence, whether today or the potential of coexistence, assuming we're addressing Palestine?
Yeah, that's a difficult one in the sense that, in 2023, when I was visiting professor at Max Planck, I was leading a project called Reparative Practices. And it was a project highlighting social repair, political repair, and trying to think precisely the idea of coexistence and especially the idea of coexistence between people who have disagreements. To what extent you can attenuate conflict, you can engage in repairing conflict. So I was very interested in, as an anthropologist, I'm more interested in thinking this as people try it on the ground, so to speak, rather than thinking it in the abstract. So I was trying to think Israeli-Palestinian organizations, and there are many that were trying to create on the ground modes of coexistence between them. Today, you can say that these have either completely disappeared or they have a hard time legitimizing themselves, because after this year, we are so far from any realistic conception of living together that I feel coexistence has become a bit like Derrida's notion of the unconditional gift. Derrida says that the gift that you give without wanting anything in return, he says it's on one hand a practically impossible gift, but on the other it is impossible not to have it as a horizon. And that's how I feel about coexistence. I think coexistence at the moment is practically impossible, but at the same time, it is the inevitable horizon for which we have to work. So it is a very difficult thing. How do you maintain a belief in the possibility of coexistence in the midst of genocide without being treated almost as an idiot, if not as a traitor even? And so on one hand, practically, what does it mean? What does it mean? And it opens up the space so much for platitudes, especially on the part of the victors. Colonialism, the history of colonialism is littered with colonial victors offering coexistence as a mode of consolidating victory. So it's a minefield. At the same time, personally, I cannot think of a long-term goal other than coexistence. And so how to reconcile this? You're welcome. You're welcome to chip in yourself if you feel like it, but I find it very difficult at the moment to think with coexistence, and I refuse not to think about coexistence.
Absolutely. That's the best way to put it because of the intensity of the calamitous moment. There's probably not a better way to put this from a humanist perspective. Thank you, Ghassan. The last topic is actually close to your heart and mind, given that, and I'll let you share as much or as little as you like, had some interesting experiences in Germany. The last topic is Germany. The four countries so far that we have on our list of topics that have been addressed are the United States, Israel, Palestine, and Germany. Because what we have seen in terms of the policies, behavior, and conditions and context in Germany is almost unfathomable. And the irony is infinite in various ways. And because you actually were in Germany and you had some interesting experiences, we're asking you, and you've sort of accepted to address Germany. Feel free to address the personal experience or not. It's up to you. But what have we learned in the past year about Germany, past, present, and potentially future?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy to talk about some aspects of the personal. Frankly, I want to say, from in relation to what happened to me with Max Planck. I mean, the main point I want to talk about is the fact that this has started with accusations made by a seriously unprofessional newspaper, an extreme right newspaper that is specialized in political assassination of people they don't wish to have Germany deal with. And I feel particularly bitter about the fact that such third-rate journalism ends up having such an amazing effect on what is supposed to be a first-class educational institution. And the fact that the institution becomes so worried about its public image after an attack by such poor standard journalism that it felt the need to engage with me in the way it did. So that's one point. The second point highlights also what we have been talking about. What I found amazing in Germany is the degree to which the politicians and the ministers of education, etc., how present they are in the educational institutions. They don't shy away. Like people speak openly about the ministry wants this and the ministry wants that, and that is, to me, in Australia it's pretty bad, but it's not like this. So I found it incredible that people take it so for granted that educational institutions don't have autonomy from the political and are open like this to political sort of like interference.
Sorry to interrupt. Is it on the question of Palestine or the region slash the Arab world, or is it on all questions that this autonomy is absent?
Well, I don't know. I mean, yes, that's precisely the point. I'm not really an expert in Germany, nor am I an expert in German education. I just have that experience, and that experience struck me comparatively in what is happening. I have to say also that, and part of the reason why I want to address the question of Germany is because a lot of people talk about Germany. And I want to highlight the fact that since my sacking by Max Planck, the number of German institutions that have invited me to give keynote addresses has been phenomenal. So it is not some kind of like mass obedience exercise. There's many institutions that invited me and specifically said, we're inviting you because we are so pissed off with what is happening here. And so I want to use talking about Germany to invite people not to homogenize Germany too much as we are talking about it. As with every place in the world, there's resistance, and by homogenizing, we don't end up helping the resistance to what is going on, which is quite important. But the other thing, of course, that interests me in Germany is about the mechanisms of transference of historical guilt, and the way the politics of anti-Semitism and the politics of philo-Semitism is happening. What happened to me has made me reflect a lot about this amazing ability of, I mean, I'm not sure when the first German historical text showing that Nazis in the 1940s were in fact influenced by Palestinians. Otherwise, Nazism would not have happened. This is the degree of absurdity to which sort of like the transference of guilt has been happening. Sort of like the people who think that if their grandfather was a Nazi who committed mass murder and genocide towards the Jews, thinks that not only are they doing the right thing by adhering to Israeli politics unquestionably, but they actually think that as if their grandfather is no longer guilty. No, it's a kind of like removal of the inheritance of guilt. I find that pretty, as an anthropologist, it's of the order of the magical, like there's some kind of like shamanic ritual that is going on here, sort of like through which people sort of like cleanse themselves of an unbearable historical guilt. That's why I find it so interesting that something as good as what started as good, which is the way Germany has embraced a critical look at its history and its responsibility towards the Holocaust, becomes instrumentalized as a cheap mode of cleansing the self and of transferring guilt onto others. And what makes it worse is that the others they are transferring guilt to are what today is probably the most victimized people of our present, which is the Palestinians.
Yes, that's a lot in there. I wish we could devote an entire conversation to this. Maybe actually we will at a different juncture. Um, Thank you so much, Ghassan, for sharing your thoughts, and thank you for keeping to time. I am, you know, as is the case in all of these conversations, I'm really interested in saying more, but I will refrain for now and I will let you go. Before I let you go, however, I would like to ask you a very difficult question, an unfair question, but I ask everyone, and you can decide to answer however which way you see fit. And that is, where do you think we are headed in the context of the genocide in Gaza, Israel's genocide in Gaza, supported as it is by the United States and quite a few other European and other countries? Where do you think we are headed in the future? What's next?
Well, let me say a couple of quick things. First of all, I think we are in a period of what I've called naked power. I come from educationally, I come from long Marxist tradition, which has a kind of like as its basis the idea that power always dissimulates itself, that power hides, and that the role of the intellectual is to uncover power, or that power lies, and such as it was Said told us, have to speak truth to power. But we are in a period of naked power, which is a period where it seemed to me that power does not wish to hide at all. Power is, as they say in Arabic, على عينك يا تاجر. That is, here we are killers, we are immoral, we can manipulate the truth. We do what we need to do in order to win and piss off. There's nothing you can
in your face.
Nothing you can, there's nothing you can reveal about us which we are not already revealing to you, but we will exercise power. So this kind of nakedness of power, the exercise of power, comes at a time also of massive defeat, for not just for Palestinian resistance, for Lebanese resistance now, which happened just in a short period, but it's a long defeat of many of the forces of the left that has been happening slowly. And I think if we do not take into account the fact that we are grounded in a history of defeat at the moment, we cannot think the future. And because we are at the height of naked power and at the height of defeat, my sentiment is, how do we protect ourselves? How do we protect ourselves just to survive that phase? And I think a politics of solidarity is not just solidarity resistance, but a solidarity which involves the caring for the self. I was quite interested in how often Che Guevara refers to this, actually, when I started thinking about it. Even though Che Guevara is considered as sort of like this kind of like guerrilla fighter, but in fact he took a lot of time to think about moments where you just need to care for yourself, and caring for the self as a way of reinvigorating yourself, because caring for yourself can be a mode of escaping and forgetting. But I think it's so crucial today. I'm meeting so many people who are exhausted by what is happening, and to the point where the exhaustion is physical and you can see them. And my feeling is to tell them, okay, so they've won many things, but there's no need for them to kill you on top of that. Look after your health. I mean, I know it seems banal, but it's not. Look after yourselves. Don't let what is happening run you down psychologically and physically and etc. Because we need to recuperate. That is what I feel.
That's pretty valuable and very true, especially if people are more interested in affecting the world than just interested in taking it in. Because if you don't take a break from taking it in order to do exactly what you're saying, you won't be able to have any effect on it, because you will be worn down. That's actually a wonderful advice, and a very actually positive way of ending this very negative sort of context that we are in, and I'm assuming will be in for longer than we ever thought we would. Ghassan, this has been really remarkable. I'm very happy that we spoke, and you just got yourself in trouble, like all the people I tell got themselves in trouble, because it means that I'm going to call on you in the future if you ever have time.
It'll be my pleasure.
شكرا كتير عزيزي.
Thank you very much for having me. مع السلامة.
Absolutely. تسلم. Take care of yourself. سلام.